The acquisition of Cam Whitmore was one of the biggest moves for the Washington Wizards this past offseason. We're starting to see the hype that was built around him all summer, and it's time for him to get more minutes.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you are locked on to the Washington Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, the number one sports podcast network in the nation. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Alongside the DC Sports content creating Savannah Abdullah-Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and I cover DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. AB, start of a new week, 14 losses in a row for our Wizards. But today we get into the topic of Cam Whitmore. I think you and I have been pretty excited to talk about this all day.
I think everyone's been waiting for us to talk about him more, Ben, a guy who deserves more minutes, and we'll get into him. But what an acquisition this past offseason. Started off pretty shaky when it came to his playing time, but these last 7 games, Ben, he's been looking really well.
100%. You segued it perfectly. I want to get into Cam Whitmore, why he deserves more minutes, and why he's a focal point right now within this young core of players and trying to build something here with Cam Whitmore. He should be part of that equation for the Wizards as it stands right now, and then we'll get into the veterans later. Are they still playing too much? I think they are. I'll tell you why later on in the program. In Cam Whitmore's last 7 games, he's averaged 21 minutes per game, which I think is not enough firsthand, but I'll get more into that as we go on. In the last 7, though, 14.5 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, and assist. He's shooting 67% on his 2-point attempts, 39% from three-point land, and 85% from the free throw line. In addition to that, his per 100 numbers have been really good. I'll save that for just a moment, but I want to start here with Cam Whitmore. Now that he has figured himself out in this Wizards offense, we're starting to see those returns that we hyped up so much over the summer, because you saw the explosiveness in the first 2 years of his career in Houston, just in a very crowded situation. Wasn't really the right timeline for a guy like Cam Whitmore. Obviously, given Houston in a win-now mode, and they're one of the best teams in the NBA right now. So Houston parts ways with Cam Whitmore. They wanted to send him to a situation where they felt like he could thrive along with some other young players, and that's the situation that he's in here in DC. I think recently he's really started to separate himself as one of the better offensive players on this team. Consistently, as he's been on this really 7 to 10 game run, every single time he's been out there, he has produced for them offensively, and he has been that spark plug that they've desperately needed at times when the offense has fallen flat or gone stagnant, AB. He needs to play more.
Yeah, and I feel like, Ben, it shouldn't take a guy like Chris Middleton to be injured for him to get more playing time. I think Cam Whitmore from the jump should be given 20 to 25 minutes a game. Maybe there's going to be an argument down the line where he should start, but I feel like he's more suited to come off the bench because, again, like you always mention, like I love how you talk about, he's a microwave scorer, a guy who can go in there and he's so quick in transition. The dunks, he's going to have an amazing dunk highlight reel by the end of the season. And I think it's funny you mention assists. He's averaging 1 assist, and many people claim that 1 assist, he doesn't pass the ball. And it's just funny because an isolation score, a guy who can end a scoring drought, I think you can see it in him. Now, at times, Ben, you alluded to this yesterday, where he looks better defensively. But early on in the season, it didn't look like the body language was there. It didn't look like he was there effort-wise defensively, but I think he's been picking it up. And I'm excited. I think Bilal Coulibaly, the half-court offense, outside of his explosiveness, the half-court offense isn't there for Bilal. And if Cam Whitmore, Ben, is putting up numbers like 20 points a game, 18 points per game, there's Brian Keefe or this coaching staff has to realize, we can't hold this guy back, even though it seems like it. And a lot of people were alluding to the fact that he wasn't in during that last inbound play, which I want to talk about, Ben, the whole idea of given minutes or earning minutes not given. A lot of people were saying that Bub Carrington shouldn't have been in the game. It should have been Cam Whitmore because he had the hot hand. And I understand the ball was going to Keyshawn George, but who knows? Maybe Chicago would have put more attention to Cam Whitmore, and therefore the double team wouldn't be sent. But with all that being said, Ben, he has to be playing more minutes. I mean, 18 is just not enough. He's a young guy, only 21 years old, and he can carve out a real role here in DC.
And I can't defend yesterday what Keefe and this Wizards team did in terms of his minutes. The fact that he only played 18 minutes while he was the hot hand on the floor outside of Corey Kispert. Whitmore was 7 of 10 from the field. He wasn't just getting to the rim and taking shots. He was getting good shots. He was pushing in transition. He was doing it all. You saw that behind the back dime that he had in the first quarter. This dude is just a bona fide player. Like, he can score at all three levels. He can defend when he's in the situation where he wants to. He's bought in on the defensive side. And he can actually playmake. He's a better playmaker than people think. And I know he's gotten this reputation throughout the early part of the season. People gave him the reputation saying that he didn't pass the ball. And maybe through the first 5 games of the season, it kind of was true initially because he had more shots than passes. But one thing I've noticed with him over this run, he's improved a lot as a playmaker. And I'm not going to expect this guy to be otherworldly in terms of his playmaking numbers. I'm not going to expect him to go out there and give you 5 assists every single night. That's not really what you need out of Cam Whitmore. But because he has that explosive ability and the innate ability to beat his man off the bounce, penetrate to the basket, you allow catch and shoot opportunities to open up. I think back to the one play a couple of nights ago where he did that jab step that I talked about yesterday, beat his man off the dribble, got into the lane. Everybody collapsed in on him because he's a threat to go up and throw it down every time he gets a foot in the lane. Everybody crashes down. He kicks it out to Keyshawn George, wide open in the left wing, every time. That's wide open. That's Cam Whitmore's bread and butter. So if he's not going to get all the way to the rim and punch it home, then he's going to find guys that are open outside to shoot because he's a threat wherever he is on the floor. Whitmore, you have to respect his jumper as well. We alluded to the three-point numbers, which have been very good over the last 7 games at around 40%. Cam Whitmore is an excitable player, and he's played really well over the last couple of weeks. He needs to play more. He needs to have a solidified spot in this young core as it stands right now. This is a guy who's 21 years old. He just turned 21 in July. After you acquired him, you basically got him at a steal for 2 second-round picks. And I saw some of the tweets floating around today trying to debate, is this going to go down as one of the bigger steals the Wizards have had in terms of trade acquisitions? And maybe the early returns are looking like it could be a possibility right now. You have to go back in the Wizards' history, and I'm sure there's been some other great acquisitions that have been made at some point. But this was a really savvy move from this front office to go get a guy with an upside like Will Dawkins. You figure you have nothing to lose in the situation, bringing in a super high upside young scoring player to bring within the organization to see how he fits. And I think now 16 games into the season, he's starting to find out that he actually fits really well. It maybe didn't look like it through the first 5 games, but the last 8 to 10, he looks like he fits great.
And I think that turning point, Ben, was that Cleveland Cavaliers game when he only had 5 minutes, and all of us were scratching our heads saying, why isn't he playing more? He's so talented. I think maybe Cam Whitmore looked himself in the mirror and said, I got to figure out what I can do, and I got to give it my all. I understand there's a lot of mouths to feed in this young squad, and there are some guys out there that when it comes to development are more of a priority than me, like Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, even Bilal Coulibaly. But if I'm Cam Whitmore, I was traded for. People want me here in DC. I love this team growing up. I'm going to go out there and play it 110%. And that's the Cam Whitmore that this Wizards squad needed. Granted, we haven't won recently or over a month, but Cam Whitmore is still giving you highlights. He's still going out there 20-point games, man. If we're going to keep seeing this, there is an argument where you have to start him over Bilal Coulibaly. And I know a lot of Bilal fans don't want to hear that. But what Cam Whitmore gives you offensively, I'd rather have that than Bilal shoot six shots a game and only give you 6-7 points, but he has like a dunk. That's amazing. The half-court offense, Ben, it just hasn't been there for Bilal, and I'm hoping he picks it up. But what Cam Whitmore provides you, not many guys in the league can do it at his size.
And I'm almost a proponent at some point, maybe this happens sooner rather than later. I hope it does, and I'll get into my idea that I think the vets still play too much for this team. Why does it take Middleton not playing for a guy like Whitmore to get more of these opportunities? Almost you can make the argument, if you want to start Cam Whitmore in this lineup, maybe he just starts at the 4 and you have Middleton out of the lineup. And in a situation, I know you can make the argument that like Middleton has his place and he can help out a little bit defensively on the glass, and he doesn't try to do too much typically offensively. But if the Wizards are already pretty small, and they've gone small in plenty of lineups this year, Whitmore at 6'7", like already one of your bigger players on the team. He's got a real thick build as well at 250 pounds. That sounded so weird saying it like that, but like genuinely, like
it's true though.
He is a freight train. He can go out there and he can actually crash the glass with purpose. I could see him playing at the 4 with Bilal playing at the 3 alongside. Like I could imagine a scenario where that might end up being the case at some point as a lineup they experiment with. I don't even think you have to like make it as this like competition between Bilal and Cam Whitmore. Whitmore has produced more offensively than Bilal, and obviously Bilal has missed 8 games, which is an issue so far this season. But you can imagine a world where you have Bilal out there for his defensive prowess, but allow Cam to go out there and feast on any given night.
Yeah, and I think, Ben, there's going forward, from what you've seen recently, if I see another game where he's getting less than 20 minutes a game, there's got to be something wrong with the coaching staff, where it's a form of just we're tanking. But also you want to develop, because he's 21 years old. I understand, like I mentioned, he's not top of priority when it comes to developing because there's other young guys in the squad. But Cam Whitmore could, I'm not saying be an all-star, but he can give you really good minutes. And just him being held back just wouldn't make any sense, because he's going to be in the same situation with which he was dealing with in Houston. But Houston, they were competing. This is a squad that's trying to get a top 3 pick and also trying to develop guys. And I think Cam Whitmore could be a key piece for this franchise when they're competitive down the line.
You bring up a really interesting point, and I have a very astute thought that I have for that, but we're going to save it for after the break. So you got to stick with us to hear what I have to say about that here at Locked On Wizards. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll benefits and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is an all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts at any time gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time for you to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded my dining chairs from Wayfair, and it completely transformed the room. I am ready for Thanksgiving dinner this week. I couldn't believe how fast everything shipped just in time for the holidays. Browsing through their site is easy to find the pieces that actually fit my style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to Wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. So, AB, you brought up the point, or like maybe for this organization, what the Wizards are trying to do right now is develop these young guys, obviously, and maybe certain guys have priority from the organization because they were drafted here. I might push back slightly on that because this organization might be higher on Cam Whitmore than we think at this point. You think back to the draft night from 2023. Cam Whitmore goes 20. Bilal drafted by us at 7. We trade up a pick to get him. So obviously, like, Bilal was their guy. They really wanted him. They were very interested in Cam Whitmore on that night. I know there was a lot of people that beat the table for the Wizards to draft him that night. So it was almost like a full circle moment to see him come in the trade this past summer for a lot of Wizards fans saying, man, I wanted this guy 2 years ago. Now we got him on our squad. Let's do it. But for Will Dawkins, he had the conversation with Cam on draft night and asked him how he'd feel about playing at home. They were seriously interested in the guy. He ends up sliding to 20, and not just that, they kept tabs on him for the last 2 years. One of the things that this regime has preached to the choir is that they have these grassroots type of scouts and that they keep tabs on players throughout the entirety of the process that they're in, whether they're on another team like Cam Whitmore was. They monitor the situation he was in. They saw Houston get into this win now window. They saw the minutes decreasing for Cam Whitmore, him unable to establish his role there. And they said, this is an opportunity for us to go out there and get him for a pretty low price and develop him on our own terms. Now that he's got 2 years under his belt and he's finally starting to come into his own in a Wizards uniform here in year number 3, this is where it gets really, really interesting because he becomes rookie eligible for an extension, I believe in October, same time as Bilal. But stands right now, he is right in the mix with these young core of players. I'd say right now, I'd consider him one of the core players for this Wizards team. And if that's the case, then this organization is going to make it a priority to see what he brings to the table night in, night out. And I think the way he's played offensively, especially over the last 8 games, I think he's shown a lot to say, hey, like, I fit in with this organization. If you guys want to build and create something special, like, I need to be part of that. And I think Cam Whitmore absolutely should be part of that right now.
And it's kind of funny because I remember during media day, you asked him, do you feel like you have a chip on your shoulder coming into your hometown playing in DC? And he laughed and said, this is what the narrative of my whole career so far, always having a chip on my shoulder. And I love to see that guy who's going out there and proving a lot of people wrong. And for a guy in Cam Whitmore, I remember going into the season, is there a possibility that he could come out as the best player on this Wizards roster after the season was over? A lot of people questioned that, but there is a slight possibility. But also, I think Trey Johnson is a guy that gets top priority because that's 6th overall pick. But if Bilal can't answer the bell, Ben, if he's not that guy that the front office think he is, I think they want him to be that guy because they drafted him. He was the first pick of the Will Dawkins regime. But Cam Whitmore's right there. He's just as talented as him. And if it's a guy who can go out there and give you 20 points a game, you got to upgrade his playing time, his usage, more on-ball opportunities. You don't want him to be a guy who just falls out of the rotation because it looked like that early on in the year. And a lot of fans were upset. A lot of guys that watched Locked On Wizards were like, "Yo, what are we doing with Cam Whitmore? Does it take for him to be French to be given more opportunities?" And I just think it is what it is. They were trying to test it out, and I'm hoping with more opportunities comes more highlights from the young guy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up his usage because his usage is actually at a career low compared to what it was in the first 2 years of his career. The usage rate for Cam right now at 21.6. It was 23.1 last year in Houston and actually 25.5 in his rookie season. So maybe necessarily the usage is maybe lower because he's playing slightly less minutes. But in terms of minutes he played per game in his rookie and sophomore season, it's almost the same right now at around like 17 or 18. So it's not much of a difference. But Cam Whitmore, maybe his usage is down slightly a little bit right now because you see him making more of an emphasis to play in this team style oriented basketball. They move the ball pretty well against Chicago yesterday, especially in the first half. And yes, they had their moments where they looked stagnant offensively, but in the first half of that game, I was impressed with what they were doing in terms of moving the basketball and leading to open looks, and some of those, of course, coming for Cam Whitmore. And maybe that begs the question for me, like, I feel like when Middleton's in the lineup, they actually don't move the ball as much for whatever reason that may be.
Who would have thought that?
Who would have thought? But with Cam Whitmore, the usage maybe being down is because he's not as much of an isolation player as people think. He'll pick and choose his spots where he goes and attacks the basket and throws it down because he has that ability, or he'll go and create his own shot on a pull-up jumper or a step back or whatever it may be for Cam Whitmore. But I think he's starting to really figure out who he is as a basketball player and how to facilitate that into a team role. That was kind of the rap on him in Houston, was that his style of basketball was talented. His per 36 was obviously incredible. They called him point per minute Cam in Houston for a reason, because you'd put him out there and he would just give you buckets. But they're saying, I don't know if this translates to winning basketball within our system. Maybe for the Wizards here, and obviously they haven't been winning games, and that's not the fault of Cam Whitmore or any one specific player. But maybe as the season rolls along here, we're going to see a night where his style of basketball and his elite scoring ability that we've at least seen over the last couple games translates them to actually being more competitive, to winning basketball. I think if you play Cam Whitmore more minutes, they're going to find themselves in more games. And I know they're so bad defensively overall that it seems hard to believe, but I think his scoring ability and his transition style of basketball is going to be really important for this Wizards team trying to compete in some of these games.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these games you've seen that's been close, like the Philadelphia Sixers game, the second Mavericks game, this Bulls game not too long ago. Maybe if you give a guy like Cam more minutes, the outcome looks different. I'm not saying you win all those games, but he definitely helps you with competing in it. And for a team that, again, I'll keep saying it, Ben, that's the minutes this year are going to be earned, not given. It hasn't really applied to Cam Whitmore because he's out there balling out and he's just not been given enough. Again, I don't want to say that this is the wrongdoings. I don't want to call out coaching because I'm just an average Joe that watches basketball. But if a guy out there is balling out, you got to give him minutes. You can't just give it to a guy who I understand and Bub Carrington is really young and you want him to develop. But if Cam Whitmore on a night where he's dropping 20 points and he has a team high, there's no way he's not out there for the last minute of the game.
Yeah, just unbelievable that he sat the last 3 minutes of that game. I didn't understand it at the time. I don't understand it right now, but there's plenty of basketball games left to be played, so I expect him to play more. I really, really do.
We'll understand it, Ben, during the draft lottery.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully we actually have some results that go our way for that. Let's take one more break. When we come back, I'll tell you why I think the veterans are still playing too much. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. That final possession yesterday, Abdullah, where Keyshawn gets blitzed on a double team and ends up turning it over. CJ McCollum was the one that was closest to the basketball when Keyshawn tried to get it away. And in that situation, if that was actually a pass that successfully made his way to McCollum, it would have ended up in him taking probably a low percentage shot to try to win the game. I just don't understand why McCollum is on the floor for that situation. And I know he came up big in the Detroit game, but he kind of imploded in overtime of that one. He imploded in the fourth quarter in overtime against Philadelphia. He's not helping you be more competitive from that standpoint late in these games. He's been fine in terms of how he's played overall. I'm not even going to say CJ McCollum is a terrible player or he's been bad, because that wouldn't be the truth. CJ McCollum has had his fair share of moments where he's been helpful. He's been good. I'm sure he's a good voice in the locker room for these young guys. But at this point, if you really brought these players here because you wanted them to help you be more competitive in these games, that's not really happening. It's not happening whatsoever on the majority of the nights. So what's the point in having them play 30-plus minutes a game? You say you want to be a team that develops your young players, then show that. Don't have Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum eating up minutes on the floor that you could be giving to your young players in these situations, especially ones late in the game, in crunch time. They're going to have to learn how to play in these situations. Give a young guy a shot to be out there for that situation. It's still too much veteran for me right now.
It's just the inconsistency with rotation. Ben, it's either for Justin Champagnie, it's either a DNP or he starts. There's no in between. And for us Wizards fans trying to grasp that concept of who gets what at playing time, there shouldn't be a priority when it comes to these vets in Middleton and CJ McCollum over the young guys. It just doesn't make any sense. Another young guy, Trey Johnson, I understand he was injured and he was out for the Bulls game, but even before that, there should be zero excuses for him to play less than 25 minutes a game. You want him to develop. You want him to be that cornerstone piece of this franchise, and playing a guy in Middleton and McCollum who are probably going to be gone post-trade deadline over a young guy in Trey, it just doesn't make any sense, and there's no answers to it. And I'm sorry, you have to miss me with the whole minutes are earned, not given. And then there are nights where CJ McCollum and Middleton are clearly not hitting and their shots aren't going down. There's been nights where they do hit, and I'll give them credit for that. But when they're not hitting, swing the rock. I remember there was one game, I forgot which one it was, Ben, when CJ had a wide open tray, looked at him, and still took the shot. You just don't want to see that because that brings back what type of guys here in DC? Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole. We wanted to get away from that, but seeing that is just like, where's the improvement from this season to last season with those guys?
Yeah, and maybe at the end of the day, like CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton, they're veteran players that have had really illustrious careers in the NBA. So they're like, if I'm out there, like I need to go get mine because like that's who I've been my whole career. I've been in the league for 14 years. Like I deserve to go out there and get my buckets. But at the end of the day, like CJ, like we gotta calm it down a little bit sometimes. If Trey Johnson is open on the wing, you should probably swing him the rock, dude. Like we know you can
Ben,
score.
he almost that Bulls game. I'm not calling out CJ McCollum. I love CJ McCollum, but
Yeah.
he almost turned it over. It was a Brooklyn play. Alex got the ball, passed it the ball. He dunked it, but that was almost a near turnover.
Yeah, that was a close one. Alex made a heads-up play to get to it and throw it down low to Bilal, who was all alone. Nobody was in the same zip code of him, and he threw it down, and you got the lead, and you're like, all right, we got ourselves a chance here, and of course, we found a way to lose that one. But at the end of the day, it's tough when you've lost 14 games in a row. It's tough to point the blame. It's tough to really even make sense of it at times. And AB, you and I last year, obviously we weren't doing the podcast then, but we were watching the Wizards. We were Wizards fans. We dealt with this 2 separate times last year, 16-game losing streaks, and it gets tough to wrap your head around it and really try to figure out what exactly has gone wrong other than abysmal defense. But a reason I think they're not competing as much is because they're not playing the young guys as much. I think it kind of hurts the way the team could play together, especially because you have all these rotational issues where guys are having to play essentially positionless basketball when the injuries to Sarr and Bagley have really affected the strategy that they've tried to employ out there. It gets tough in a situation. I feel like if you just run out there with your youth night in, night out, I think you're going to see better results in terms of competing a little bit more the same way we did in the second half of last year. Once it became that youth movement pretty much bought in here in DC, the team was playing better basketball, and I don't think anybody could like really discredit or deny that right now.
And I think it's going to be like a mirror of the second half of last season to this second half of this season. Once you deal those vets, you're going to see a lot of the young guys play more. I think this team's going to play fast. Ben, I mean, I want to see AJ Johnson play. Like, we're not competing. See what you got. There were some games last year towards the end of the season where he was out there, he was hooping. Why not play AJ Johnson? Why not play Ken Whitmore more? Why not play? I understand you want to keep that pick, but let's be real. The bottom 4 teams share the same odds of getting the first overall pick, so you might as well be the 26th worst team compared to the 30th worst team. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And it all starts with playing time. You have to play your young guys. It's plain and simple. We are not a competitive team. Therefore, let's see what we have in all the young guys on this roster. There should be a rule. If you're under 24, you're getting 24 minutes a game at least.
I like that. Under 24, you play 24 plus. That's a good. They should put that on a T-shirt for you, AB. I'll go talk to one of my guys. We're gonna get that, and Wizards fans are gonna buy that. We're gonna make a fortune because Brian Keefe doesn't play the young guys enough. So people are gonna buy the shirts in solidarity, go to the game and protest, saying play the young guys more, play the young guys more. We need to see our youth develop.
We're the third youngest team in the NBA, Ben. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. We need to see the young prioritized by the organization. So hopefully that is the case. Hopefully Cam Whitmore has proven that if this is a meritocracy, I think he's more than done enough to earn himself more minutes and more consistency within this rotation. Hopefully that's the case. Let us know how you feel about that. How many minutes should Cam Whitmore be playing? What does your ideal Wizards lineup look like? I'm going to dive deep and really try to figure out which lineups have been the best for this Wizards team just by net. And I'm obviously going to have to dive and see like how many minutes each have played to filter out like the lineups that have only played 5 minutes or whatever, so they have a positive net rating. But I'm going to do that, so hopefully we have another video for you soon where we can really break down a lot of the lineup data and figure out what's really best fit for the organization right now. AB, anything else, dude?
14-game losing streak. You want to make sure you don't get a 16, but it seems unlikely that you're breaking it in these next 2 games. Atlanta's really good. I think after Atlanta you play, is it Indiana, Ben?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but I thought the same with the Brooklyn game where you might have a chance of winning. But it's just, I really don't see a game where you can win before New Year's. And it sucks for me to say that, but unless there's a change, the youth movement, the young guys play more, maybe you see more fight in the team. But as of right now, it just sucks. You can't close out games. And I think the Chicago game was an aberration, Ben. There's no way you're going to get that fight every single night from the Wizards because it's just been so inconsistent this season.
Yeah, hopefully they can replicate it. I probably wouldn't count on it as it stands right now, but we got to stick with it. Stay in the fight, everybody. DC family, we thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. For your second, check out the Locked On NBA Fantasy Basketball podcast. Coming up next with Josh Lloyd, he'll get your lineup right. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the nation. It's your team, the Washington Wizards, every single day. DC family, we will talk to you tomorrow.